Never in this country's cultural history have we heard of incidents where a pilgrim or a saint had to approach a government official to obtain a passport to go from Tamil Nadu to Kerala or from here to Kashi. And this extends to thousands of years, which is why Adi Shankara, born in the southernmost part of this country, walks all the way up to Kashi, and there in the hinterland, the heartland of north of India, he composes the Kala Bhairava Ashtakam in respect of a god who primarily is respected and primarily celebrated in the southern part of India. No king ever asked Adi Shankara a passport for entry. It was believed in this nation that whenever in whichever part of the country any great scholar produces a work of scholarship, a copy of that work should be preserved and kept for posterity in the Sharada Pitha in Kashmir. So when the Sharada Pitha in Kashmir was ransacked, manuscripts from all over the country in different lipis were found, and they were destroyed by those who wanted the end of the civilization. But it also shows how not just transport, but also the cultural affinity was so one and united throughout the country even before a few centuries, when you could find easily, transport easily, important works of scholarship from the southernmost tips of India to the northernmost part of this country. I was in Gujarat during the elections 15 days ago, my dear friends. I happened to visit in one village called Kankrej. You may have heard of this cow breed called Kankrej. It is a very popular breed. So I happened to visit this district called Kankrej, which is almost on the border of Pakistan. There was a very old temple where Avadhuta was sitting, and the tradition is that from almost 700-800 years, the Pitha tradition continues. When I went and visited and took the blessings and darshana of the Avadhuta there, he told me how every year from Kankrej and those districts of Gujarat, thousands of pilgrims go to make a Tirtha Yatra to Hingala Mata in Baluchistan of Pakistan and still keep the civilizational memory alive. This is how this country's culture and civilization is kept intact. Friends, whether it was Shankaracharya's establishment of the 4 mutts at the 4 corners of the country, or the temples that our ancestors established in honor of different gods in different parts of the country. I just met our Karyakartas from Tanjavur, and I asked him, your city is famous for the Surya Narayana Kovil. There are 4 very important sun temples in India. One sun temple is in Martanda, which is right now in the Pak-occupied Kashmir. The second is in the west, in Modhera in Gujarat. The third you have in Konark, in Odisha, in the east. And then you have in the south, in our own Tanjavur, the Surya Narayana Kovil in the south. Whether it was the prayers to the Navagraha deities, whether it was the mutts, whether it was the festivals, all of these kept this country as one throbbing cultural entity. Friends, even the temple architecture is something where you find great commonality between the north, the west, the east and the south of this country. Very recently, I came across this very interesting snippet. In Kashi, one of the most important deities of the town is Annapurna. And here in Kanchi, in the Kanchi Kamakshi temple, just opposite the Garbhagriha, you find a special Sannidhanam that is made for Annapurna. A very interesting fact is that in this special Sannidhanam for Annapurna Devi in Kanchi, you will find that the temple Vimana has 6 peaks, which is very unlike other South Indian Vimana Gopuras. And if you try to find out why this Vimana has 6 peaks, the answer to that is the Annapurna temple in Kashi has 6 peaks, and that is the commonality that you will find. The Narada Sutra, the Narada Samhita, is one of the oldest texts which describes in threadbare detail the architecture, the rules and regulations on construction, as well as the temple sculpture. If you were to ask a DMK fellow, he will tell you this Narada was also North Indian, the Narada Smriti is also North Indian. But you go to any temple in the south of India, 99%, I am saying 99 because the recent temples I do not know, but all the historical temples, 100% are according to the rules and Shastras and the regulations as laid down in the Narada Smriti and the Agama Shastras. This is how the temples have been governed here. This is how, through festivals, through temples, through art, music and culture, this country was culturally kept as one. I don't know if in Tamil Nadu this practice is there, but in Karnataka, when we were all growing up, when we were in first standard, second standard, just when cursive writing and handwriting were to be taught in school, our grandmother, my grandfather, they would all make us sit and do one exercise. Every day morning, we were supposed to write in the A4 size sheet paper in the notebooks that they would give, that one single line notebook, Shri Rama Jaya Rama Jaya Jaya Rama. This was what we were supposed to write 108 times a day to improve handwriting. I don't know if this was a common exercise that we did it here, but this was something. When, growing up from that culture, when I hear somebody say that Rama is a North Indian person, you will be astounded and shocked, and also you will be flabbergasted at the person making that claim and his stupidity. You have one of India's top cricketers. His name is Lakshman Shiva Ramakrishnan. And the people here say Rama and Krishna and Lakshmana are North Indians. For how long have we let this kind of a narrative gain ground here? Friends, if we understand how festivals played a role, I mean, it is common knowledge, it is so obvious, all these things that I am telling all of you, none of this is something that I have cooked up. It's only when you have to lie that you have to cook up something. To establish and propound truth, all you need to put is your own lived experience before people. So I do not want to elaborate how, whether, Pongal in Tamil Nadu, Suggi in Karnataka, Sankranti in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Bihu in Assam, how this has kept the country together. The there is also very interesting, while this is an agricultural festival, and because we all come from this agricultural background as a country, even large Hindu festivals like Kumbh Mela finds resonance in different parts of the country. We generally know that there are the 4 important Kumbh Melas that happen, one in Prayagraj, where it is the Sangama of Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati, in Nasik, in Ujjain, and then in Haridwar. And Kumbh Mela is a very, if you try to understand Kumbh Mela, you will understand how the Sanatana Dharma system functions. No pamphlet is printed, no banner is made out, no announcements are made through loudspeakers. People assemble on the said day from different parts of the country in all religious fervor. They come, they take a dip, they offer prayers to whatever parampara they follow and go back silently. A miracle that you can witness only in this land. The interesting part is, while all of these 4 primarily happen in the northern and the central part of India, in the south, in our own Kumbha Konam, we have our own version of the Kumbh Mela. And it happens, it's Mahamagam. And Mahamagam and all of. And the beauty is, Rakka, when she was introducing the theme for today, was quoting from Gange Chaimune Chaiva. So the legend says that the Kalyani that is in Kumbhakonam, in front of the Shiva temple, the entrance of the Shiva temple has Shiva with 9 goddesses, and all these goddesses are the 9 rivers in all parts of the country. And when the yatra takes place, and all the devotees and the gods from all across the town come and do the holy dip, it is believed that you get more punya by doing the snanam here than what you get in all the 9 different rivers combined. So this is Gange cha Yamune chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalesmin Sannidhim Kuru in action. You may not know the shloka by heart. You may not have memorized the shloka. But even if you are the quote unquote the unwashed, illiterate, the village pilgrim, you are living this theory, living this sutra, living this mantra in action. This is how our culture designed the oneness of nature, oneness of living. Friends, I'm in Chennai today and the Margadi season is going on. It would be unjust if I do not make some reference of how music and dance has also kept us together. If you understand our classical arts, it may be whichever part of the country. When I went to Assam and I was listening to the Sankirtana that was happening in Assam, Shankar Deva and the other folk singers, if you try to understand very keenly the lyrics, you will find surprising similarity to the folk songs, the Sankirtanas that are, say, in the Tamil language, or for in my case, I found great resonance to the Vachana Sahitya that Basavanna and other great thinkers of Karnataka had made. Where is Karnataka? Where is Vachana Sahitya? Where is Shankar Dev and where is Assam? But all of this, the classical music of this country, the devotional music of this country binds us again together. I was told that Muthuswami Dikshitar, one of the greatest composers in the Carnatic music lineage, lived for a long time in Kashi. And it was in Kashi that he was influenced by the music forms in Kashi, in the northern part of the country. And that is where he was inspired to compose the Gange Mam Pahi Kriti. And it is also believed that it was in the Hanuman Ghat of Varanasi that Devi Saraswati gave him the divine veena and blessed him wholeheartedly to continue the seva for the music. It again is a matter of shock that fake narratives have always tried to create artificial fault lines and divisions between all of us. It was said that Hindi is North Indian. It was said that Vishnu or Rama is a North Indian god. Yesterday, Sai Deepak and I were on the same flight and I was, discussing this. The Kriti by Swati Tirunal, Vishweshwara Darshana Kara Tanamano Chalo Manatum Kashi. I'm sure many of you have heard this. This one Kriti demolishes most of these fake narratives. It is composed by Swati Tirunal, a king in the southernmost part of India in Kerala, composed in Hindi in reverence and honor of a god Vishweshwara residing in Kashi in the northernmost part of the country, and he himself has the pen name Padmanabhadasa. So this fake narrative of Vaishnava versus Shaiva, Hindi versus Tamil, North versus South, all of these are demolished if you are rooted and understand what really is the culture of this soil. So is Bharatanatyam, which is inspired. Bharata Maharshi's treatise. And if you read up where Bharata Muni lived, he lived the greatest part of his life in Ayodhya. So I am surprised as to how, for such a long time, we allowed narratives of this kind to run aground. When I travel Maharashtra, especially the youngsters here, I make a very sincere request to you. If you want to really appreciate firsthand the impact of the Tamil Bhakti movement all across the country, make a visit to Maharashtra. There you will realize how the Bhakti movement, which emanated and originated in the southernmost part of this country here in Tamil Nadu, swept the whole of the nation and was also the most potent and resistant force in the north against the Islamic invasions that swept through the country. One of the greatest contribution by the Tamil civilization in recent times is this resistance that the Tamil nation the Tamil civilization gave, inspired the rest of the country through the Bhakti movement. This is the lived reality. This is how all of us have understood Indian culture to mean to live, because this is the only life we have lived. Anything else we do not understand, because this is the reality that we have lived in what in Upanishadic terms can be called as Anubhava Pramana. What is the Pramana for testing the truth? Experience. That is the truth. That is the basis of experience. That is the touchstone of verification of truth, experience. But unfortunately, what we experienced as our lived reality and what we were told in the classrooms in history or the political narratives that we were forced to buy was something very different. Friends, I want to just highlight, again, this was something that Sai and I were discussing yesterday, of how the complete U-turn that the British missionaries did with treatment of the Sanskrit language is a great indication of understanding their nefarious design behind this. If you observe, in the early part of the 18th century, the British missionaries, starting from Monier Williams to Max Muller, all of them made very serious and a very sincere attempt to understand, learn and master the Sanskrit language. And there are multiple evidences that are available as to what was the motivation behind them learning the Sanskrit language. They even established chairs and scholarships to enable people to study Sanskrit language. And all of those scholarships at the time of the endowment, at the time of selecting the candidates, they make it absolutely clear that the motivation again was to learn Sanskrit so that they could use it as a tool to convert the natives. So the motive behind learning the Sanskrit language, even by those people who are today hailed as savants of the Sanskrit language, was also to convert the natives. Then you will see at a later stage, say after a century later, the end of the 18th century, when Sanskrit was dying a natural death thanks to the systematic and deliberate killing of the Gurukula system, and when people started realizing there is not going to be social mobility learning that language, economic mobility learning that language, then came heroes like Robert Cadwell, who again used the Sanskrit language, but there was an absolute U-turn. What was to be a tool to convert the natives, now the same language was called demonized as a tool that a certain sections of the country's upper classes used to subjugate the masses. This was a new narrative that was crafted. If one were to make a very simplistic study of this U-turn in the treatment of the Sanskrit language in just a matter of 150, 200 years, one will understand the nefarious design that was behind the treatment, or rather the study of the language itself. So the racial theory was born, language was used, linguistic divisions, linguistic diversity rather was used to prevent the larger consolidation of the Hindus. And which is why fault lines or divisions or diversity that existed naturally in the Indian culture was used by those who hated this culture to create perpetual divisions. Friends, I just want to highlight 2-3 important issues before we think of some actionables that we all can take. The period between 1915 to 1925, if you look at the country's political history, the period between 1915 to 1925 marks a very important as well as a very interesting period for India's political history. It was in 1917 that the Justice Party was founded. It was in 1920 that the Communist Party of India was founded. And it was in 1925 that the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh was founded. So this period between 1915 and 1925 is a very interesting period. It was only 25-30 years before that, in 1885, that Evo Hume had founded the Congress. So if you broadly look at these four organizations, you will realize that with the exception of the RSS, all the other four organizations, all the other three organizations, were either founded by a foreigner, in the case of the Congress, or was inspired by a foreign ideology, in the case of the Justice Party as well as the case of the Communist Party. And you will also realize that in the case of the Communist Party, it was also founded in Tashkent in USSR. It was not even found in India. So the only Vichardhara, the only organization that was founded by Bharatiyas representing the Bharatiya Vichardhara was in 1925, that was the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So all of these other organizations, they are neither Bharatiya in spirit, nor are they in thought, and never have been in action. Today, we are in 2022, at the threshold of celebrating a century of the existence of these three Vichardharas in this nation. A very brief and a very cursory analysis of how these three ideologies have worked on this nation will enable us to make very important choices for the coming next 25 years, which is a very crucial period for the country's and the civilization's future. The party that was founded by a foreigner in 1885 and which was also led by a foreigner for more than a decade, the less said the better about its contribution and the havoc that it created in this nation. The decade that it ruled was a decade of decay for this country. Most of the ills that inflict the country's polity today, the country's culture today, the country's administration today, all of these allies, the malices that afflict the country, the Gangotri for all of this is 10 Janpat. The second ideology that was founded in 1920, the Communist Party of India in 1920 in Tashkent, like the Congress Party, even that is on its way to extinction. The only last remnants are today perhaps in two places, in some parts of in Kerala and in some tea stalls in JNU. Other than that, you will not find this ideology relevant or alive anywhere. But if you look at this ideology all throughout the country, all throughout the world, you will find that this ideology, this Vichardhara, has this innate ability to morph itself into new avatars. So it keeps taking new forms. It wears different masks and different colors. So as long as the society is aware and wary of the possibility of this ideology taking multiple forms and this perpetual metamorphosis that goes on with this ideology, we can be rest assured that the country will be safe, the society will be safe from those new forces which are now trying to create havoc in Delhi and tried to enter Gujarat also and failed miserably. I was in Kerala just 3-4 days ago. I had been there to participate in a Shraddhanjali program organized by the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha in honor of our former Vice President of the state, Shri Jayakrishnan Master. Shri Jayakrishnan Master was murdered by the communists in 1999, December 1st. He was 36 years old. He was teaching a class full of students, and in front of his students, the communist terrorists butchered him and killed him by, in the most horrible, most horrific of manner. His body was cut into 8 pieces. In front of his children, in front of his students. For more than a decade, most of the children who witnessed this murder had to go through therapy. This is broadly the contribution of the communists to India. Violence. Violence in the name of protecting freedom of expression. Violence in the name of protecting diversity. Violence in the name of protecting and championing the cause of the poor. Friends, I also met our karyakartas who were there in jail on false fabricated charges. A karyakarta was 27 years old. He is convicted. He is not an under trial. He is convicted on an attempt to murder charge on a and when I asked him how many years has he completed, he said he has completed 2 years. Asked him how many more, he said 12 more years. The lower judiciary is completely politicized. There is no avenues available to seek justice. This is the kind of ecosystem that the communists have created in their last bastion. This has been the lasting legacy. And we all know that the Justice Party, which was started in 1917, has also metamorphosed today into the DMK, which, to borrow Professor Vaidya's words, is a family-run unlisted business enterprise. Now it's listed. So, if you look at the way these ideologies, these vichardharas have wreaked havoc economically, politically, culturally, socially, you will realize that there is only one ideology, only one worldview, only one vichardhara, which is Bharatiya in spirit, Bharatiya in its thought, and has contributed immensely to the creation of prosperity in this country. And that is our vichardhara, the vichardhara that the Bharatiya Janata Party represents. Nothing can be a better example for this than comparing the 7 terms that the BJP got to serve in Gujarat and the 7 terms the communists got to rule in West Bengal. The 7 terms of the BJP's service in Gujarat has made Gujarat one of the most prosperous states of the country. The per capita income of Gujaratis is one of the highest in the country. Gujarat is the state known for its best kept law and order. There is Shanti, there is Samruddhi, there is Suraksha. Compare the same with the 7-term communist rule in West Bengal, which has impoverished the state, reduced most of the population to penury and poverty, perpetually kept class wars at play, and reduced what was once the civilizational torchbearer of this country, the Bengal land, to one of the most diminished, one of the most deracinated places and population today in the country. This is what the communists did in 7 terms that they were blessed with. The reason why I had to mention all of this, my dear friends, is this, that the political narrative is an all-pervasive narrative. The narrative that we set in politics determines what kind of narrative is set in your music. The political narrative determines the kind of movies that are shown. The political narrative determines the kind of sportsmen that are encouraged. From art to sports to culture to the kind of books that are published, the political narrative is omnipresent, omniscient, and determines everything. Fix the political problem, rest of the problems will all get solved on its own. Friends, looking at the way the country is voting out these ideologies repeatedly and embracing the ideology of inclusivity, of Bharatiyata, which celebrates diversity and never uses diversity as fault lines to peddle political agenda, whether it is in Gujarat, whether it is in Uttar Pradesh, whether it is in the Northeast, we will realize that the time has come and the time is ripe for Tamil Nadu also to be walking on this path. Friends, politics is a very interesting business. The message is important. But in politics, the messenger is also as important as the message. For a very long time, not just people in Tamil Nadu, people even outside of Tamil Nadu who were sympathetic to the interests of this nation, of this culture, of this civilization, of this land, we always felt that we needed a stronger messenger to put our message across in Tamil Nadu. And today, the message that was always strong, the message that inherently has strength, the message that is as old as this nation itself, has found in Annamalai a strong messenger. And let me tell you with 100% certainty, a very, very silent, but a very, very real revolution is taking place in Tamil Nadu as we speak. This change is being noticed, acknowledged in different parts of the country. When I am in the northeast of India, say in Guwahati, boarding a flight, a very sympathetic to the Bharatiya cause youngster talks to me and asks, भाई तमिलनाडु में इस बार बहुत चेंज होगा ना, ऐसे लग रहा है हमको. This is the overall sentiment throughout the country. It is now our responsibility to translate this intangible sentiment into tangible political dividend. Friends, I want to only say this before I conclude. From the time of the Vishnu Purana, from the time of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, from the time of the Vedas, from the time of the Shiva, Rama and Krishna, this nation has always been one. Whoever may try whatsoever they want to, but it is impossible to break the unity that is integral to this nation so long as the country's people remain true to its dharma. Because that is the secret of this country's soil. Dharma has united this nation. And nothing is more important for Bharat today than unity. Unity at the level of our languages, unity at the language of our states, unity at the language of our myriad different traditions and culture, and unity in every aspect. We must remember that the Bharatiya Janata Party and the RSS combined have done more to lift the people out of poverty than the communists have done ever in the whole world. In the last 8 years, this country under the leadership of our Prime Minister has lifted the largest number of poor people out of poverty than in India's existence as an independent nation. So those people whose career, whose politics has completely been built around poverty, they can take a break now. Those people whose politics have been based on ideas, random ideas like rationality, can be rest assured that the country has made more progress in the last 8 years in science and technology under Modi, under the BJP, than any rational thinking government. More number of SCs, STs have gotten empowered in the truest sense under our government than those people who made political fortunes in the name of those people. If there is one party which has garnered the support of the highest number of MPs from the SC/ST community, it is today the Bharatiya Janata Party, because they today know that it is BJP which delivers real progress and empowerment. In this sense, my dear friends, we are the ones who have brought this country together. We are the ones who have brought this country united. And I feel in the coming 25 years, the south of India is going to contribute immensely for the country's prosperity, the country's unity. And what bigger, what better an example to draw inspiration from the great emperor Krishna Deva Raya, who came from Kannada lineage, wrote in Telugu in honor of a Tamil poetess devotee Andal, and celebrated the unique oneness of this culture. This is what we are, this is what we will be, and it is on this foundation that Bharat will be established as the Jagat Guru of the world. Thank you so much for hearing me out today. Namaste.
It's really overwhelming to...
புயல் தேஜஸ்வி சூர்யா அவர்கள் வெளியிடுகிறார்.
Srimati Sindhu. Namami Gange Shujada se
से चल पड़ी अतुल्य तुम रमामणि, देश में जगह जगह पुण्य तुम प्रसारती, गंध युक्त पुष्प सी वाराणसी की मालिका, देखना तुझे सदायम का भय भगाएगा। वेद की पनक जहाँ वेग से प्रवाहिनी, मंत्र एक मात्र के उसों की तू बोधिनी। नाथ के शरीर पर अनेक नाग सज रहे, स्नान गंगा में किया सर्व पाप कट रहा। दूर सुदूर स्थान से पुरुष महान योगिया, जपते नाम गंगा का करके प्राप्त श्रेष्ठता। पुकार लोक की से भी करेगी ताप शांति, माँ स्मरण न टूट भक्ति से समस्त सौख्य देती माँ। केशहीन शंकर ने चंडाल रूपी शंकर को कहा हटो हटो, तभी देख रही थी दृश्य को। जनित हुआ विवाद से समस्त जीव ब्रह्म के, पुलक कुठी लगर लगर बनी तो साक्षी तत्व की। भस्मधारी शैव हो विष्णु जी के भक्त हो, शक्ति रूपी शाक्त हो द भेद भाव मुक्त हो। जब स्नान गंगा में करे धर्म भाव युक्त हो, मैया के आशीष से ज्ञान से सब मुक्त हो। घन 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 जाज्वलित प्रवाह से करती नष्ट पाप बीज अनेक संग्रह से। मोह माया लोभ क्रोध कलुष सभी निवारती, वारती कृपा ने करे जो तेरी आरती। मस्ती काशी में ही क्या नहीं तू सर्वव्यापिनी, देश के पुनित गर्भ के जल में भी विराजती। मस्ती काशी में ही क्या नहीं तू सर्वव्यापिनी, देश के पुनित गर्भ के जल में भी विराजती। समर्रहित राष्ट्र के गर्व का तू गान है, सदैव सदा कालवत तुम पर हमें मान है।
Thank you, Sri Tejasvi Surya, for releasing Mrs. Sindhuja Chandramauli's tribute to Kasim Tamirum. We thank Tejasvi Surya for enlightening us and loading us with enough ammunition to take this battle forward. India is a sacred geography, starting from there to quoting, nationalism is Sanatana Dharma. The poet of this land, Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati, in his own words, emphasize on the same point, saying that Sedamilla Hindustanam Madai Devam Endru Kumbidadi Papa. Thank you for enlightening us with the same point. There is not a point that you miss. Art, culture, architecture, temple, agriculture, history, and how political narrative influences cinema, literature, and sports. May I request Sundar Raman and Mrs. Sharada and Mr. Suresh to honor our next speaker, Sri Sai Deepak. Sri Sai Deepak is our next speaker, and the session is Dravidian exceptionalism and sessionist regionalism. Sri J. Sai Deepak is a litigator practicing as an arguing counsel primarily before the Supreme Court of India and High Court of Delhi. A mechanical engineer from Anna University, Sai graduated with a bachelor's degree in law from IIT Kharagpur's Law School in 2009 and has carved a niche for himself as a litigator in civil, commercial, and constitutional matters. He has been part of several landmark cases of commercial and constitutional significance before the Supreme Court and High Court of Delhi. And the most important thing about Sai Deepak is most of his public speeches goes viral, and every Diwali, his speech about why do we celebrate Diwali, why do we burst firecrackers, I receive at least 15 of them from different WhatsApp groups. He is an author and the bestseller, he is the author of the bestseller, that India, that is Bharat, and India, Bharat, and Pakistan. Even today, I saw him signing a few books here on this dais. Over to Sri J. Sai Deepak to listen to him on Dravidian exceptionalism and sessionist regionalism.
வணக்கம் நமஸ்காரம். நான் பேசுற தமிழ் டிஎம்கேக்கு பிடிக்காது. So I'll do my best. நான் ட்ரை பண்றேன். We are all children of Macaulay, unfortunately. So it's unfortunate that I'm much more proficient in English than any other Indian language. I will try and reduce this deficiency in my public preparation over the coming years. This much I guarantee. Fortunately, Hyderabad la poranda valandadnala in Tamil innu koncham pure ah irukum. Our blessings. I don't think it would have been possible to expect this kind of a crowd on such a topic for this platform even 5 years ago. I think the history of Tamil Nadu has come a long way from the origins of 1917 significantly. I've had the benefit of calling him as Tamil Nadu in Tamarai, that is Annamalai. Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry. Am I audible now? Yes, okay, fine. I said, I've had the benefit and the luxury and the fortune of calling Annamalai Tamil Nadu in Tamarai. And there's a very good reason for this. I think the stars have aligned for all the right reasons. At a time when I think the demographic composition tilts in favor of the youth, you have a fantastic option and a voice to present. Someone who is as comfortable in khaki as he is in vella veshti satte, and someone who is capable of straddling, I would say, the local media as well as the national media. Very few people can do that. And he comes from the city that I have studied in, Coimbatore. So I have a very special soft corner for Annamalai. So I hope that under his leadership, there is of course the expectation that political Hindutva will make its presence felt at the electoral level. But I genuinely hope that there is a greater rise of societal consciousness. I agree with Tejasvi entirely that politics has a very serious bearing in terms of pop culture, in terms of the music, in terms of education, in terms of setting the narrative. But before an issue reaches the political level, it goes through a churn at the level of the society. So clearly, options like Annamalai, Tejasvi and leaders across the country are the product of a societal yearning which has been brewing for several decades. Asking, will we not find leaders who will finally ventilate the suppressed voice of this civilization? Now you have to realize that while it's easy for us to sit and take pot shots at politics and politicians, it's practically a thankless life. And especially if you happen to be someone with a conscience, it's even more thankless. Because 24/7, you're constantly traveling, and I've been following Tejasvi's journey both over the last few years and especially over the last few months. Absolutely hectic, and I thought my schedule was crazy. With all that, for him to be able to capture the saransh of dharma and Indian civilization, of the Bharatiya civilization, the way he has done, is not a reflection of his preparation, is a reflection of his commitment and conviction in the strength of the civilization. Because preparation will take you only to a certain distance, but beyond that, do you truly believe in what you preach and practice, or let's say, do you truly believe in the words that are coming out of your mouth? I think the audience is smart enough to understand that. And I think the reaction of the audience clearly bears out the strength of his conviction. I'm usually not in the, I don't have the practice of basically saying he's my friend or she's my friend. But I can confidently say he and I have a very good equation, wherein at the very least it's possible to reach out and express some real concerns. I genuinely hope Tejasvi remains accessible and approachable to people like us as he climbs the ladder, which he will. Now coming to the topic, let me build on what Tejasvi has, I think, laid a fantastic foundation for. Now the sum and substance of what he has said is more about the innate civilizational unity of this land, the need to preserve that unity, especially for the next 25 years, because I genuinely believe, and I think we share that particular belief, that the next 25 years will be as interesting as they will be challenging. Because people who were expected to remain silent have suddenly started speaking up. And therefore it is bound to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And it is time that this particular vocalization of a position translates to real outcomes. I'll give you a very clear example of this. I come from a city which wants everything from politicians but rarely takes part in politics when it matters, which is Delhi. It wants the best of everything, and the ones who come forward to take pot shots at infrastructure and everything under the sun didn't even bother to turn up for the elections, for the MCT elections. There was practically no representation from the so-called elite parts of Delhi. If you think politics is dirty, assuming for a moment that is truly the case, that dirt still has an impact on your daily life. So you do not have the option of staying out of it under any circumstances. Is there a single program on Netflix which is any more apolitical? No, it's not. It is heavily political and ideological. Because you thought that OTT platforms were capable of at least giving you content which is free of the political nonsense that is spewed from mainstream pop culture. But that's not possible, because an ideology which accused a community of hijacking politics has handed over politics to a family, not even to a community. That's the irony of it. I could have still understood that in this power sharing cycle that goes on over centuries, that power moves from one community to another community. That is the nature of history. I can completely live with that. But it has finally come back to one particular family, and it's not even as if the community for which it was voted for has benefited from it. Because I'm a realist, so therefore I'm happy to live with the reality that with each power cycle, one particular community benefits and then it moves on. Possible, because it's a question of power, it's a question of real estate, it's a question of numbers, it's a question of muscle on the street. All these factors can be taken into account. I have really no problems with that. Now, why is it that these topics become relevant? The one thing that Tejasvi said is very pertinent. I'm just trying to build on that, which is, how did we allow these fake narratives to find water and to find nourishment in this land? It goes back to a central thesis that I've been trying to put out for the last 3-4 years. You can only blame the outsider to a significant extent, but beyond that, you have kept your doors open for the outsider. And therefore, it is a blame that we must equally share for the fissures that have been created amongst us. So while I will certainly focus and request the members of the audience to focus on the larger message of unity that he has presented, the way to that unity is to understand the root cause behind the existence of divides among us. Now it takes us to a slightly uncomfortable realm, but then I am no stranger to speaking uncomfortable truths. So I might as well do my best to make this session as uncomfortable as possible. The recent controversy surrounding Ponniyin Selvan as to whether Cholas were Hindus or not, and whether Saiva Siddhanta is part of Hindu fabric or not, we can keep laughing at it because to us it says, what nonsense is this? But there was a very clear politico-theological foundation that was laid in this part of the country for this particular kind of politics to find support. Tejasvi mentions the period from 1915 to 1925. I would just request you to go back perhaps a century before, because the origins of it effectively starts from 1801. So I'll give you just a few timelines. By the time I am done, I will connect the politics of 1801 to the Sabarimala petition of 2016. I will cover everything, what is the nexus between the roots that were laid in 1801 till what happens and what continues to happen in Sabarimala. So 1801, there is a gentleman by the name H.T. Colebrook who comes to this country as part of the gift of Europe, which is colonization. And he effectively says that all languages in this country are to be traceable to Sanskrit. That is the original position of the Christian missionary in this country. Now, which was the first part of Bharat that was effectively colonized? Bengal. So what are the major regions? You have the Bengal Presidency, you have the Madras Presidency, then you have the Bombay Presidency, and then you have Allahabad. That's how exactly these presidency courts were set up. So if you read the politics of Bengal and you read the politics of Madras, you will have a very clear picture of how the missionary movements moved. How is it that every reform movement with respect to Hinduism starts exactly in those places where the British power center is established? And along with that, the missionary comes with him. So by 1801, their position broadly based on the Oriental school of thought about Bharatiya philosophy that is set up by missionaries in Bengal is that Sanskrit is the mother of all languages. This is the original position. Subsequently, from around 1830s onwards, Robert Caldwell is a much later phenomenon. He features in the history of this land only around 1856 onwards when he wrote his seminal work, The Comparative Grammar of Dravidian Languages. And by 1881, his work was almost done because by then he had become the bishop of a particular region in this country or in this particular land. And you will perhaps have a very clear picture as to why does the demographic composition reflect a certain way. He became the bishop of Tirunelveli. So don't be surprised at the demographic composition of that particular part of the country, because the investment is not 100 years old, the investment is close to 200 years old in that particular region. So you're not fighting DMK, you're not fighting DK, you're not fighting Justice Party, you're fighting the investment which was much prior to the Justice Party, which was older to the Justice Party by at least a century. At the very least. So prior to him, there were two administrators, Francis Ellis White and another gentleman, Campbell, Alexander Campbell, who come to this part of the country because you see, India was first of all a punishment posting for people in the civil services in England. Because this is a hot country, dirty country, heathens, pagans, idol worshippers, black people. And the punishment posting, Madras was the adhigmala punishment posting. Because that was seen as Yerder not sunny. Sade Sati, literally. Tropic of Cancer out of blast furnace lam chuttanga. Inga poi avanda vandu vegarudanu solli. And therefore, since Bengal Presidency happens to be the first brush of the British colonizer with the Indian civilization, and since he is not used to the cultural diversity of this land, when he comes to Madras, he thinks that this is so radically different from Bengal. And therefore he starts assuming, look at the difference in physical features, look at the difference in script, look at the difference in language. 100% these are people from a different race. That's how their understanding starts. Because Bengal is not what you see as Bengal today. Bengal presidency includes the better part of North India until its partition in 1905. So they see a certain culture there, and Madras presidency goes right from the bottom until Odisha. And they say all these features and the difference in features must be attributed to something very, very fundamental. And that is a difference in race. Now you have to realize that simultaneously, as Tejasvi pointed out, missionaries are trying to find out what is the best way to convert. Because that's their single point agenda. Now, can we learn Sanskrit and somehow establish a similarity between Sanskrit and our languages so that we can go after the top order of the society, namely the Brahmins, and then convert the rest of the society? Once Brahmins have been converted, they fail to convert. And the worst part is, they thought we can give them a certain incentive by making them a part of the administrative infrastructure, teaching them English and whatnot. Poor people, they didn't realize that these Iers were better at English than them. There are records which have been captured in a fantastic book that was published in 1969 by an American journalist by the name Eugene Urshik. EU, for people who wish to read, E-U-G-E-N-E. Urshik is I-R-S-C-H-I-K. His birthplace was Kodaikanal. And this fellow captures all the correspondence and the frustration of the British man saying, we thought we will teach them, they come to the establishment and they're teaching us. But since they are so quick at learning, you know what, we'll have to tolerate them. And then gradually we have to start telling them, your brains are attributable to the fact that you're somehow related to us, so that foundations are gradually laid in the form of a connection between the so-called upper classes of this country and the British man in the form of the Aryan invasion theory that is slowly pushed. Now you have to realize there are 2 or 3 parallel streams that are going on. There is the political stream, there is the religious stream. How they merge together, and then how Congress contributes to this problem in 1937. I'll come to it much later. I won't take too much time. Chittu kodukku necessity kandipa varadu. Kavaliya padadilla. So, by I think mid 1850s or 1840s, there are 2 competing schools of missionaries and they are divided. One school of missionary effectively says, sorry, there is a commonality in the entirety of Bharat's culture. The other effectively says, no, Telugu and Tamil don't have Sanskrit as their parents. And that's how they start putting it out. In the politics between 2 groups of missionaries, the second group ultimately wins. So it's not as if their ideas are the same. End goal is the same, but they differ on the means. The second group says, no, there is a very clear distinction. And they start putting out, first is the linguistic separation, and then one group starts speaking of the racial separation. The genius of Robert Caldwell was to put together the racial separation and the linguistic separation together to basically say, all of this is attributable to the fact that there is actually a religious divide. So he brings together the deadly mix of religion, race and language. And you know how they do that? They go back to the one book that they were trying to give to us for these justifications, the Bible. So there is a biblical, let's say, figure called Noah, who apparently saved the world from the flood, so on and so forth. So Noah has 4 children, Japheth, Shem, Aram, and Ham. By that time, William Jones, who is credited for revival of Sanskrit in this country had already taken the position that Sanskrit was the language of three children of Noah: Ham, Japhet and Aram. நாலு குழந்தைகள் மிச்சம் யாரு? ஒருத்தன் தான். Right? Shem. So, the new theory that starts is Tamil and Dravidian languages are the language of Shem. And that Tamil apparently is closer to Old Arabic and Hebrew than to Sanskrit. Imagine this was pushed and this was taken very seriously. By 1856, Caldwell makes this a central document. By 1881, when he's become the Bishop of Tirunelveli, what he starts doing is, let me start mapping those parts of the Madras Presidency where there's a lot of competition between communities and see where I can push this more successfully. The training ground and the experimental ground became Tirunelveli. And there he was able to push that entire theory successfully. Now, parallelly what happens is, since you have effectively made the Brahmin the evil creature, his subsistence on the basis of dana from the rest of the communities are taken away. That leaves the Brahmin community with only one option for sore thanni. English கத்துன்னு எங்கேயாவது வேலை பண்ணி தொலையலாம், வேற வழி இல்லை, ஏன்னா இங்கேருந்து சாப்பாடு வருது இல்லை. So they learn English and they join. This fellow treats them as an irritant who has to be employed. And the rest of them see, oh, so he's learned English and he's gone up. And that sense of competition is then exploited for the next 100 years. To effectively say, why should this community alone get English access? Why not others? Now then comes the next actor into this entire picture. There starts a fight between the Tamil identity and the Telugu identity. And the demand for a separate Andhra province also starts. So all of us will be fighting. You fight for Telugu, I will fight for Tamil. You fight for Modaliyar, he will fight for Iyer, this fellow will fight for Chettiar. All of this will go on. The money seems to be coming from some other place. Swaha, 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 swaha. And somebody is pouring ghee into this fire. All of this goes on until a point where by early 1900s, the language divide, the racial divide and the religious divide have acquired very serious political overtones. When a societal cord, let's say a societal fissure, becomes so serious for it to find political representation, that means it has achieved mainstreaming. It has become that serious because people are now talking about it at the political discourse. So in the language of 1900s to 1920s, you will see the Aryan-Dravidian divide. You will see the North Indian, South Indian divide. You will see the Brahmin, non-Brahmin divide. You will see the Telugu-Andhra divide. All of this playing into the hands of somebody else. And it moves to a point where in 1919, where the Muslims were asking for entrenchment of communal electorates, which is to say separate electoral reservations for Muslims, people from the south were effectively saying, we too want this for a certain set of communities altogether. When that gets rejected, representatives from this part of the country go to London to say, do not give India home rule. And these are representatives of the Justice Party who go to London and specifically plead, home rule movement is apparently a Brahminical movement because it is led by Annie Besant. Because Annie Besant is one of the founders of the Theosophical Society of India, Vadayar. And she speaks of the greatness of this culture. And when she speaks of the greatness of this culture, she's talking about Brahminical culture. So if the British man leaves, the Brahmin will take over. Active representations are made. So did you stop at communal electorates for a particular group of people? No, you didn't stop at that. It came to a point where you're actually looking at crystallization of a real concept called Dravidasthan. Because by then the point that is being made is as long as we are part of Bharat, Tamil Nadu and this particular part of this country will always receive secondary treatment because that victimhood was fed into our minds by the British administrator who didn't want to come here because he thought this was the worst of punishment posting, and that was fed further by the missionary. And finally, a resolution is passed in Kanchipuram in 1940 at Justice Party asking for a separate Dravidistan. Now they thought they would get a brilliant partner in this with Muhammad Ali Jinnah because he was asking for Pakistan. So members of Dravidistan and members of Pakistan were hand in hand. Is the situation any different today? Find out. Now, Jinnah is not interested in these people. He is like, my people, I don't care for you. As long as I can divide and get my people and I can use you to get a separate country for my people, you're useful. When Congress said we are not sitting on the table for any kind of negotiations if Dravidistan is on the table, Jinnah said, I am not supporting Dravidistan anymore. So then what will these Anadais do? They have no other option but to continue crying. No, Dravidistan, we have to do something about it. So from 1940 until 1963, effectively when, let's say, from Justice Party it is moved to DK, from DK it moves to DMK, and then there is a clear parting of ways in terms of societal initiatives by our Dadi Periyar and by Annadurai on the other hand, this movement continues. Now all this while, they drop 2 or 3 goals of the so-called Dravidian movement. The Christian missionary is constantly saying, break the caste structure, it's easy to convert. But a Dravidian movement which is entirely based on caste identity cannot give up caste identity, no? They can only remove it from road names. Beyond that, they can't do anything. Because without that identity, how do we ask for 69% reservation for Tamil Nadu? Very difficult. Right? Over and above the constitutional ceiling of 50%. That is a symbol of Dravidian exceptionalism and entitlement where it believes that the rule that applies to the rest of the country does not apply to this country. So, they effectively start in terms of language imposition, so on and so forth. But the one mistake, and this mistake has to be attributed to the Congress party around that period, around 1937, is when there is already an Aryan-Dravidian divide, there is already a language divide, they introduce Hindi in schools as a way of education. There can't be a stupider move in the history of this country where you introduce Hindi at a time when that language itself is the subject of a serious problem. When there is already a huge divide. Offering it as an option is one thing, but to treat that as a medium of education at a time when there is already a fire raging here which is being fueled by outsiders, what kind of Chanakya Niti this was, I have no idea. And this was done by a particular politician who is apparently seen as the Chanakya of his time and who was the Sambandhi of Gandhi. Adikmala na solla virumbala. Okay, Adikmala na solla virumbala. I respect him a lot, but this was the case. Okay? Governor General, Chief Minister and all that later. Because when you are looking at history, we have to be slightly more ruthless and objective in our analysis. Our personal likings can go for a hike for a moment because you're talking about the country at the end of the day, you're talking about the civilization. So this is what happened. Now, the next time and the next wave is that they realize that if we actively push for conversions, let's say the entire trick book will be open in front of the public. So let's secularize it. And we will secularize it in the name of anti-Brahmanism followed by secular rationality, so on and so forth will be actively pushed. Because I have to protect my caste arithmetic in order for me to come to power. So this goes on. Then in 1969, a young Christian convert lays the foundation for the myth that continues on WhatsApp till date. He writes an article about how Tirukkural was a Christian and how Tiruvallur was a Christian and how he was converted. 1969, this was written by a guy called Devanayagam. So he starts the textual evidence. Parallelly, the Bishop of Mylapore starts looking for archaeological evidence. So he pays someone to manufacture and create archaeological evidence. That apparently St. Thomas visited Bharat in 57 CE, and that myth is given a certain degree of support. By 1975, as part of these efforts, one bishop pulls out a stone from a place called Neelakkal, which is supposed to be the playground of Swami Ayyappa in Sabarimala, and he says, this is the cross that was planted by St. Thomas at Sabarimala. This is 1975. Sabarimala Ayyappa devotees said, nothing doing, we'll come up in black shirts. And the karuppu sattik, in the karuppu satte vela pannum. DK oda karuppukku Ayyappanoda karuppu dhaan badal. I say this because that is one temple where all so-called caste differences merge and die. You don't know how to respect a woman, here's a brahmachari. You don't know how to talk about women, here's a brahmachari. Who knows what is celibacy, who has control over his tongue when he speaks about women or when he is in their presence. That's the difference. So 1975 this happens. Before that, in 1950s, the Sabarimala temple is broken into and the murti is hacked into pieces. Now, who has the incentive? I will not answer that question. And the temple is set on fire because you see, this is a Mala temple, and apart from that, since he is a yogi who is a Naishtika brahmachari, it is not a temple that is supposed to be kept open year round. And therefore, what happens is, the guardians of the temple, so on and so forth, they also leave the temple and they come down from the hill. So, adu kaakradhukku eppovume yarum on the time la kadiyadu. So, burn the place and hack the murti into pieces. So, what started in 1950s, then there is an attempt in 1975. Read a few newspapers to what happened around the latest round of Sabarimala agitation in terms of the controversy surrounding Neelakkal again, where cross plantation started once more in Neelakkal. This is not new. This is the commitment where one failure doesn't result in silence. It results only in temporary silence. And then they wait for the right opportunity, because all this while simultaneously, the Hindu society is being constantly deracinated thanks to its education in English. So you will wait when the society itself is ready to spew and spit on its own culture, and then you reclaim the place. The latest round with respect to Sabarimala, I don't know how many people have been reading this, is if the male Shanti of Sabarimala can come only from a set of families. That's the latest question. And the weapon that will be wielded once more, whose value and whose consequences I will leave it to the audience to judge, is the weapon called equality. Now, this is the broad setup or the broad framework of the Dravidinist cancer. Please address these problems immediately. It is no more in the realm of just pop culture, it is going to affect you in every way possible. The one part of this great nation or this great civilization that has managed to preserve its temples despite the ravages of time and history and 1200 years of barbarism is under a different kind of insidious attack. It is for us to say, okay, we'll keep fighting amongst ourselves. Our differences will continue, but no outsider will at least get the right to speak on the table when we are speaking. The ideal goal would be to somehow find a way to submerge these differences, but that's a long-term process. But at the very least, in the interest of survival,
Do not let an outsider partake in these discussions. Politically, socially, culturally, they have no business talking to us or about us on these issues. That is the one thing that I hope we go back with in the form of a sankalpam. That's all I have to say. Namaste. Vande Mataram. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Sri Sai Deepak, for this wonderful awakening speech that you gave us here on the topic Dravidian exceptionalism and sessionist regionalism. It was actually a time travel. You took us across the history of 200 years. You helped us demystify the idea of the missionaries, the idea that has been planned and well executed over the last 200 years, and how we have been divided in terms of the region north and the south, the languages, and Aryan and Dravidian and whatnot, and also helping us demystify this Noah's 4 sons and help us connect how they tried to connect Hebrew and Arabic to one of the oldest languages, Tamil. They have been fueling this fire, and you also led us through the walk of the Dravidistan and the Pakistan and how Devanayakam plotted this missionary fuel and carried it on until today. I hope all of us will carry these values and also remember the final point that you told us, that we will not let an outsider speak while we are on the dais, while we are on the table talking on the subject. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being patient and participating in this session. We will now take a break for lunch. We will have the next session at 2 p.m. sharp. The speakers are already here, so please make yourself available by 1:50. There is a packet lunch available. You may please try and collect the packet lunch that is available. We'll see you soon. So after lunch, we have a very nice session on Tamil cinema. We have all the speakers here, so do join us. And the most awaited event of the day, the Tamil Nadu Bharatiya Janata Party President Shri K. Annamalai IPS will be joining us post-lunch. So ladies and gentlemen, please make it fast and come back as soon as possible.
you